The world awoke to a reality it had long feared, a nightmare scenario that had been relegated to the realm of speculation and geopolitical analysis. The unthinkable had occurred, shattering the fragile sense of security that had been painstakingly constructed over years of diplomatic efforts, but dared not fully imagine. The news spread like wildfire, carried on the airwaves and across digital networks, each headline more alarming than the last. Emergency broadcasts interrupted regular programming, and social media platforms buzzed with a mixture of disbelief, anxiety, and outright panic. On a quiet Saturday night, as families gathered for dinner and city lights twinkled against the inky sky, the fragile peace of the Middle East was shattered, a delicate balance of power irrevocably disrupted. The region, already fraught with tension and simmering conflicts, was plunged into a crisis of unprecedented proportions. By a calculated act, a meticulously planned and ruthlessly executed operation that would have far-reaching consequences, the United States launched devastating attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities. The strikes were precise and overwhelming, leaving behind a trail of destruction and a cloud of uncertainty hanging over the region. This was not a response to sudden provocation, not a spontaneous reaction to an immediate threat, but a shocking reversal of a public promise made just days earlier, a betrayal of trust on a global scale. President Trump had announced a 2-week window for negotiations, a period of diplomatic engagement, offering hope for de-escalation, a glimmer of light in the gathering darkness. The world held its breath, cautiously optimistic that a peaceful resolution could be found. The world breathed a sigh of relief, believing diplomacy might prevail, that reason would triumph over recklessness. But that hope was extinguished overnight. The fragile flame of peace was snuffed out, plunging the world into an abyss of uncertainty. The promise of talks was a smokescreen, a calculated deception designed to mask the true intentions. Instead of envoys, B-2 bombers, stealth aircraft designed to penetrate enemy airspace undetected, and Tomahawk missiles were sent, precision-guided weapons of destruction. The attack was a brutal message, a stark and uncompromising declaration of intent. Diplomacy had been abandoned for military force. The olive branch had been discarded in favor of the sword. The sense of betrayal was profound, a deep wound inflicted on the collective psyche of the international community. Not just in Tehran, but among America's allies, who felt blindsided and undermined by the sudden shift in policy. For the first time, the US had directly attacked Iran's sovereign territory, a move that violated international law and set a dangerous precedent, escalating the conflict to a new and dangerous level. The world teetered on the brink of a wider war, a conflict that could engulf the entire region and beyond. President Trump declared Iran's nuclear facilities completely obliterated. A bold and provocative statement, a political statement as much as a military one, intended to project strength and resolve. The world now faced a terrifying new chapter, a period of heightened uncertainty and escalating tensions, where promises meant nothing and war loomed larger than ever. The future was uncertain, and the path ahead fraught with peril. The 2-week negotiating window was presented as a final chance for Iran to avoid war. In reality, it was a public performance. Behind the scenes, preparations for a strike were already underway. The Trump administration hoped immense pressure would force Iran to capitulate, but the decision to attack had likely already been made. America's allies invested diplomatic energy, unaware they were being misled. The betrayal was not just in breaking the promise, but in the calculated deception that lulled the world into a false sense of security. When the bombs fell, the illusion of diplomacy collapsed. The 2-week window was not for negotiation, but for preparing a pre-planned assault. This episode has left deep mistrust, making future negotiations far more difficult. The American assault on Iran was executed with terrifying precision. The primary targets, Fordo, Natanz and Isfahan, were the heart of Iran's nuclear program. B-2 bombers dropped bunker-buster bombs on Fordo and Natanz, while Isfahan was hit by Tomahawk missiles from a US submarine. Iran's air defenses were overwhelmed. The scale of the attack was immense. The US claimed total success, but the world waited anxiously for the consequences. Early reports indicated no radiation release, a small mercy amid the chaos. The physical destruction was vast, but the political fallout was just beginning. The attack's true impact would be felt far beyond the blast zones. Iran's response was swift, a calculated move demonstrating their resolve, and furious. The retaliation was not just a show of force, but a clear message to the United States and its allies. Hours after the US strikes, the tension in the region reached a boiling point. Air raid sirens wailed across Israel, piercing the night with their ominous sound. As Iran launched missiles at Tel Aviv, the city's skyline was illuminated by the fiery trails of incoming projectiles. And Jerusalem, the holy city, a symbol of peace for so many, was now under direct threat. This was direct retaliation, a bold and unprecedented move by Iran. Not against US forces directly, avoiding a wider conflict for now, but against America's closest ally, sending a clear message about the cost of supporting US actions. Iranian leaders condemned the strikes, using strong language to denounce the American action as criminal, a violation of international law and a grave act of aggression, warning of everlasting consequences, hinting at further actions if the situation continued to escalate. Iran declared it reserved all options, refusing to rule out any potential response. To defend its sovereignty, making it clear that any further attacks would be met with a strong and decisive response, signaling the conflict was far from over and that the region was teetering on the brink of a full-scale war. The missile attacks on Israel, while alarming, were also a calculated escalation designed to send a message without triggering an all-out war, meant to deter further aggression and to demonstrate the potential cost of continued attacks. By striking Israel, Iran aimed to show its capabilities. Iran raised the stakes, forcing the international community to take notice, showing the cost of attacking Iran and the potential consequences for those who supported such actions would be paid by America's partners, highlighting the risks of aligning with the United States in the region. The world watched in horror as the situation rapidly deteriorated, as violence spiraled out of control, threatening to engulf the entire region in a devastating conflict. The American attack, meant to solve a problem, had clearly backfired, had ignited a regional firestorm with potentially catastrophic consequences. The dream of diplomacy was replaced, seemingly overnight, by the grim reality of war, a stark and terrifying prospect for the people of the Middle East. The American attack instantly fractured the international community. Israel praised the strikes, seeing them as necessary to neutralize an existential threat. In contrast, much of the world reacted with shock and condemnation. The UN called for de-escalation. European allies were alarmed by the reckless move. Russia and China condemned the strikes as aggression, echoing global outrage. Critics focused on the violation of international law and the Non-Proliferation Treaty. The attack set a dangerous precedent, powerful nations bypassing international bodies to attack others. The world was left more divided and unstable than before. Israel's praise was drowned out by a global chorus of concern and fear. If you're finding this video insightful, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us create more in-depth content like this. The sense of betrayal felt by the world in the wake of this unilateral action cannot be overstated. It was a profound shock, a rupture in the already fragile fabric of international relations. The hope for peaceful dialogue, painstakingly nurtured over years, seemed to evaporate overnight. America's promise of talks, extended with such fanfare and apparent sincerity, was seen as a serious commitment, a genuine effort to de-escalate tensions and find common ground. The international community had placed its faith, perhaps naively, in this pledge. And its abrupt reversal, the sudden shift from diplomacy to military action, left allies feeling not only foolish but deeply ignored, their counsel disregarded, their concerns dismissed. The sense of being sidelined was palpable. European nations, long advocates of diplomacy and multilateralism, were especially stung by what they perceived as a betrayal of shared values and a rejection of established norms. The foundations of transatlantic cooperation seemed to tremble. The attack punished Iran, ostensibly for a nuclear program that was, at the very least, being closely monitored by the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency. The agency's presence and oversight were meant to provide assurance and transparency, but the justification for the strike was based on suspicion rather than concrete, irrefutable evidence, raising serious questions about the validity of the intelligence and the decision-making process. This preemptive strike, launched without clear and present danger, suggests a dangerous new doctrine in international relations, an attack based on fear, on perceived potential threats rather than on established facts and verifiable actions. This sets a worrying precedent. Such actions, driven by speculation and preemptive aggression, threaten to unleash a cycle of endless conflict and contribute to a climate of pervasive global instability where trust is eroded and the risk of miscalculation is dangerously high. America, in pursuing this course of action, abandoned principles it once championed as cornerstones of its foreign policy: the respect for sovereignty, the right of nations to govern themselves without external interference, the commitment to peaceful resolution of disputes through diplomacy and negotiation, and the adherence to international law as the foundation of a stable world order. The promise of talks, now revealed as a hollow gesture, was the final act, the coup de grace, in the systematic dismantling of global diplomacy, leaving a void where dialogue and cooperation once stood. The world must now grapple with the implications of an America that speaks the language of diplomacy while simultaneously engaging in acts of aggression that says one thing and does another, undermining its own credibility and eroding trust on the world stage. The trust shattered by these attacks, the bonds of cooperation severed by this act of betrayal, may take decades, generations even, to rebuild, if it can ever be fully restored. The damage is profound and the consequences far-reaching. The injustice of the US attack is compounded by glaring double standards. America and Israel demand Iran abandon uranium enrichment, while Israel secretly maintains a large nuclear arsenal. Israel, the region's only nuclear power, refuses to sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty or allow inspections. Iran, a signatory, is attacked for its monitored program. Israel, a non-signatory, faces no pressure. Billions in US aid flow to Israel even as it avoids scrutiny. This double standard undermines the global non-proliferation regime. It sends a message: nuclear weapons are acceptable if you're allied with the right superpower. The attack was about power, not principle. The elephant in the room is Israel's undeclared nuclear arsenal. Israel's policy of ambiguity hides a stockpile estimated at up to 400 warheads. Despite this, Israel faces no sanctions or pressure to disarm, protected by powerful allies. Iran, by contrast, signed the NPT and allowed inspections, yet is punished for its transparency. The world debates every detail of Iran's program, while Israel's operates in secrecy. This is not just a double standard, it's a breakdown of the NPT's core principles. The message to the region: only the powerful are exempt from rules. This encourages other nations to seek their own nuclear deterrence. Ignoring Israel's arsenal makes the region and the world more dangerous. The US attack on Iran sets a dangerous precedent for the 21st century. It signals a shift from a world governed by law to one ruled by force. When a UN Security Council member attacks another nation, it tears at the fabric of the post-war order. The justification: potential future threat, normalizes preemptive war. This weakens the Non-Proliferation Treaty and encourages an arms race. The message: treaties won't protect you, only nuclear weapons will. The world must choose equal laws for all or a future of endless conflict and mistrust. Only a return to fairness and genuine diplomacy can pull us back from the brink.